Are you ready to break free from the chains of diet culture, embrace your power as a woman, and reclaim your health on your own terms? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Nourish Her Podcast, the ultimate destination for women who refuse to settle for anything less than who they were made to be. We're not just here to talk, we're here to inspire action. With expert insights, practical tips, and a hefty dose of motivation, we'll empower you to take charge of your health, prioritize self-care, and unleash your inner strength like never before. So whether you're a busy mom juggling 1,000 responsibilities, a fitness enthusiast hungry for knowledge, or a woman who's simply tired of feeling like she's not enough, Nourish Her Podcast is your sanctuary. It's a reminder that you are worthy, you are capable, and you are deserving of every good thing the Lord has to offer. Nourish Her is not just a podcast, it's a movement. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Nourish Her Podcast, you guys. It's been so long since we've been on here, and I'm so excited to be back at it here in 2025. It's been a roller coaster since we literally did our last podcast in December. It was just like right before Christmas, and I'm just really excited to be back. What's up? We have Coach Cindra in the house, and she was actually on our last podcast, and we had talked about, hey, we're going to come back on and we're going to do a whole podcast about hormones. We had like all of this stuff planned out for 2025. January is going to be our big month. And then boom, our life was just like spiraling. So I am so excited. Cindra, what's up? How are you doing today?
Doing good, excited.
I know, I'm really excited about this podcast because we get so many questions about this specific topic, which we'll get into in a second. So for all of you that probably follow me, you will have seen that I got pregnant. I found out literally on Christmas Eve. We were headed to Christmas Eve, like our church service, and I had gotten in the bath and I was like really nauseous. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to throw up. I think I have the stomach flu. This Christmas is going to be the worst Christmas ever. And I'm just going to puke for like 2 days straight. Like just felt really sick. My husband and I were intentionally trying the last probably 5 or 6 months. And so it occurred to me that my cycle was supposed to happen like in the next couple of days. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should just take a pregnancy test. So I was like in the bath, I like took it and just was like, whatever, just laying there, like trying to breathe through the nausea. And then I got out and I was like, oh, yeah, so I'm pregnant. And then it was just kind of, if for any woman that's experienced this, the rush of emotions, like I'm so excited, I'm so scared, I'm like excited again, and then I'm like scared again. And then this will be my third baby. And so I was like, oh, I gotta like tell my husband, you know? And so then I'm trying to like be creative, like, okay, it's Christmas, like I could do so many cute things. And then I just like, it was so dumb. I just like handed it to him. You know, when you just get so nervous, you're just like here. And he's like, what is this? And I'm like, it's just a pregnancy. He's like, oh. And so we both like start crying, but then like
Oh,
we're like also like crying out of like, oh no, we're about to have like 3 kids, you know? But no, we're so blessed. So that really took like basically took me out for 3 months. If you guys have been
yeah.
minister. So Coach Cindra that's on today, she's my head assistant coach, and she like oversees all the back end of my business. And she's like, okay, I knew something was up because I didn't tell her for a while. And she's like, there was just a lot going on that you were just like missing. Oh, I bet I was, because I was like not a human. Like I felt like the worst ever. So this third pregnancy has just completely like derailed me until I hit literally 15 weeks. And now I feel like my normal self again with a belly. So that's what's been going on and why we have not been back on this podcast. But also Coach Cindra had a big surgery, which I'll have her talk about here too. So we've just kind of had a lot going on. Oh, and my dog died, which was horrible. And our grandma died. Like literally it was like
Oh, we're gonna forget about that.
yes, our grandma
Yeah.
died. and then our dog died. I'm like, what is happening in 2025? So it just kind of all hit at once. So we are back at it. And then Cindra, tell them a little bit about what you finally got to go through. I don't know if it's a good bad thing, but yeah, kind of talk about that because that was super cool.
Yeah, so if y'all remember, if you listened to the last podcast, I kind of talked a little bit about the infertility journey that my husband and I are on. And I can't remember if I had talked about just some of the symptoms that I was having around menstrual health, which again, I'm so passionate about this topic because of my own journey. But just to kind of update since last podcast, I did end up getting endometriosis surgery. I have been suspecting that this was an issue for probably, oh my gosh, probably 15 years. I mean, 17 maybe. I mean, the start of my cycles when I was about 12 years old, they've never been good, to say the least. And I've had a couple different doctors that kind of just push me to the side. And you know, it can be frustrating. I will put a little insert here to say that it can be frustrating when you feel like a doctor is pushing you to the side. But I always have to remind myself doctors are not God. They are not perfect. They cannot possibly know every single bit of information out there. And so I just kind of had to learn in my own journey that if a doctor was not willing to listen to my symptoms and kind of even look deeper into the issue, then they may just not be a specialist in that area. And they may not be comfortable. And that is okay, right? Like doctors have the right to not feel comfortable in certain areas. Well, I ended up finding a doctor that within 5 minutes of telling him of symptoms, he was like, sis, why have you not been checked for endo? Like, what's going on here? And so that was reassuring to finally have a doctor to be able to say, no, like you have some serious symptoms going on and we need to get this figured out. And so January 29th, yeah, it was like right in the beginning or right at the end of January. I had endometriosis surgery. They found quite a bit. You know, it wasn't in, I can go really deep in this, but I'll try not to. But there's different stages of endo. So the good thing is like when it comes to endometriosis, whether it's pain related or fertility related, location is key more than staging. And yes, the staging is very important and can kind of determine even more so, like chances of pregnancy and things. But kind of to give it in the most simplest forms, I was informed that I had the worst possible placement of endo for both pain and fertility, but thank God I was at stage 1. So it's the most mild staging. We are just praying that this is kind of the last point to be able to have a beautiful little baby in our arms one day. But I can say now that heading into the menstrual podcast, I can proudly say that my last 2 cycles have been a world of difference. To which I will always say, fight for a doctor that listens to you. You know, don't give up hope on that because nobody should have to live through misery. And so, yeah, that's kind of my journey. I have fully recovered from the surgery and doing well from it. I'm excited to have some answers and also just hopeful on the rest of our journey.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I just think it's so interesting. I think it's also like where you live because like the surgery from
Oh,
yeah, some of the women I know just like in my state, like it's just like common. Like a lot of people get
yeah,
that surgery. So I just think if you hear her say anything like, gosh, advocate for yourself because
yeah,
yeah, doctors are not God and they don't know everything and they might not see everything, but you know your body best. And that's something I tell our clients all the time. You know you best. And so take what you've learned and what the symptoms you've had and take that until you find an answer.
yeah.
Um, so this is why we are actually talking about women's hormones. So this one, just Cindra's personal journey is really cool and will tie into this and why she's become so passionate about this. I think we talked a lot about her GI journey in the last podcast, but then also with her infertility the past, what has it been now? 5 years? Yeah.
Yes.
And so this has led her down a path of figuring out what is going on with the woman's body, how does it work? And it's been really, really cool. So if you guys don't remember, Coach Cindra and I both come from a medical background. So her and I have both basically been RNs for 10 plus years. And so she's been more on the critical side. She went like ICU and then I went oncology. So we kind of went both separate ways. But what we both came to realize in our career was that like while medicine is amazing, there's also so much that is missed and that things can be optimized on the other side of medicine. And so we feel so fortunate to be able to help people through this. And so much so, oh gosh, it's just such a, we already talked about this, but like such a God thing when Cindra and I met because we've just aligned so much. But I remember telling her, like, before I opened my company, like, I really thought to go back to be a holistic nurse practitioner. Like, I wish I could kind of do all the things, nutrition and run labs and do all these things. And she's like, yes, like same. And she actually went to start her own nutrition company and realized like it wasn't necessarily like her passion, but was like the business owning side of things, right? But nutrition totally. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And she's like, I've actually been thinking about going back to school to, be able to do that. And I'm like, dude, we could like do this together and kind of live out each other's like dream. And so she literally went back to school. Was it like 2 years ago now? Like, are you?
Oh, it feels like it. No, no, I guess my first semester was last January, so I've been in it for just right at 1 year and I have
It feels like
nine,
so much longer.
9 months left.
Yeah, so she's almost graduated with her clinical nutrition specialty degree, which is so cool. And I was introduced to my first CNS through another company, and I was just quite confused at like what that was because I come from like the just typical like this is a doctor, this is a nurse practitioner, so I wasn't really sure in the whole holistic side of things. But it was really cool to see that like a clinical nutrition specialist is someone that focuses on the nutrition and the internal body and is able to do certain hormonal and blood work testing, GI mapping, so on and so forth, and prescribe different supplementation and just different protocols for the body. And the only thing that I kind of found that you guys couldn't do was just prescribe FDA medications, which in my specific opinion, I don't think that it's so necessary all the time for that. Now there is a time and a place for it, absolutely.
Right.
So which I had fallen a lot in love with the whole CNS thing. And so Cindra, yeah, she will graduate at the end of this year, which is so exciting. And we here at JNFC will be able to run all blood work, all hormonal testing, like which her and I specifically are really passionate about. We just like geek out about it. Like even her being in school, I'm like, teach me about like what'd you learn? Like because I just love learning. And so she's just been teaching even me stuff that like we never learned in nursing school ever.
Wow.
So today specifically, we're going to talk about just basically like women's hormones, because I think this is something that I don't know. I feel like there's a lot out there on it. And then when you're on Instagram too, it's like, take like, well, I don't even know. There's like, do this, do this. And there's just so much. And I feel like it's really overwhelming and it kind of makes me like freak out inside. And so I think just knowing the science behind it, but also just like how to advocate for yourself, I think will be really good. So hopefully this is a blessing to someone listening. And then we're just really gonna just like break it down. So like we're gonna talk about the menstrual cycle. We're gonna talk about like the different phases, which I'll be so honest with you, like up until like 2 or 3 years ago, I did not know the phases. Like I knew when I was like ovulating, but like I didn't know what the luteal phase, the follicular phase, like I didn't know that. I was just kind of like, I think this is what it is. So I think educating women on that, because I've even had clients like when I ask them what phase they're in, they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, okay. So they don't know either. So that'll be super cool. So we're going to break that down and then we're going to talk about just like the main hormones that a lot of women come to us and ask us about, which is typically progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. Okay. And then also another big thing we see, I would say specifically in like we see it a lot more in the perimenopausal age range. It's just insulin resistance. So we also just see like women from 20 to 40 with the issue of PCOS, right? Or just straight up insulin resistance. So what is that? Like we'll just kind of talk through that as well. And then kind of we'll end it, I think, with just some practical tips. And kind of what do we do about all this, right? So what do we do with all this information? So I think this is going to be a really good podcast and take some notes. And here we go, Cindra. So let's first talk about the basics of the menstrual cycle, because literally I did not know half of this until like 3 years ago when I started to like understand the body a bit more. So let's talk about that and then we'll go into like the main hormones.
Yeah. So I will say I'm right there with you, Jordan. Like, had no idea about the different phases, and I'm gonna be quite frankly honest, like if it wasn't for my journey of fertility, I probably wouldn't know it as in depth.
Yeah.
But I have always said that if I walk through anything, I just pray that God lets me help someone else. And so I'm going to be honest, like I have so much information in my head that I have learned and studied because it is my passion that I hope to be able to help others. Like Jordan said, if it becomes overwhelming and you're like, where do I even start? Like, what is the facts? What is the truth? Break it down. So at the most simplest form, if we are talking basic menstrual health, what does that even mean? So something we may not hear a lot of is we kind of think of our menstrual cycles or our menstrual health as in like two different sections. We have the pre-ovulation section, we have the post-ovulation section. And I feel like that's probably the more common understanding of our cycles. Like we know we ovulate, so we have a pre and a post, but we really don't know much past that in just like general knowledge. So I want to kind of break this down a little bit more. In those two main parts of your cycle, you have four phases. In those four phases, your first week or your first phase is called your menstrual phase. That's your time of bleeding. This can range for so many women. It could range from, some women have bleeding for 1 to 2 days. Some women have it for 8 days. So like your menstrual phase can fluctuate depending on who you are individually. Once the end of bleeding or the bleeding ends, then you have the follicular phase. The follicular phase is when we are building follicles, like we're getting ready for ovulation. Your body is preparing for that. Once your body prepares for that, then you go into ovulation phase. Now, this was probably the most confusing to me because I am very number oriented. I don't know how you are, Jordan, but I'm very like everything has to be in exact order and it has to make sense in my head. So kind of backing up just a minute, menstrual phase can last 1 to 2 days for one woman. It could last 8 days for the next woman. Follicular phase could be 3 days for one woman. It could be 12 days, like that part of the cycle can fluctuate so much.
Yeah.
Where it becomes a little bit more consistent is in that ovulation phase. Ovulation typically occurs around 12 to 24 hours. That phase, depending on how you're kind of breaking it down, we could probably say that phase lasts 36 hours, maybe 48 at the absolute most. And then your luteal phase is supposed to be 14 days. Like that should be right on the mark, 14 days. So if you kind of hear the beginning part of your cycle will fluctuate more depending on who you are. The end should be more consistent, I guess is the word to use. So it's not like your menstrual phase is 1 week, your follicular is 1 week, your ovulation is 1 week. Like these kind of change day to day, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the four phases broken up. Now, when we're talking about the four phases of the cycle, we then go into, okay, what hormones kind of fluctuate these? So then we're kind of going back into the discussion of your pre-ovulation, post-ovulation. Pre-ovulation, so kind of in that follicular phase, adding or getting to ovulation, that main hormone is going to be estrogen. Estrogen rises, and that's where your body starts to get prepared. It's starting to get ready for ovulation. Once we ovulate, a couple days later, our body produces what's called progesterone. Progesterone rises, and it prepares the body for pregnancy and or cycle. So I think I want to stop here and just kind of remind every single woman, because sometimes this can be like, okay, so what is our cycle actually telling us? And this is so important in this entire podcast to understand what is your cycle telling you. And the most basic information, our cycles are designed for pregnancy. Like we are trying to get pregnant every single month. We are releasing an egg, progesterone rises to prepare the uterus, get it ready. And then if pregnancy doesn't occur, we start cycle. So I feel like when we kind of understand our cycles related to pregnancy, things start to make a little bit more sense. Instead of just thinking of menstrual health as like something we just go through for just misery.
Yeah.
How many times were you like, what is this even for, Lord? Like, why do I have to deal with this? So that's kind of the most basic that I can kind of break it down, like the four phases, the hormones that are involved, and why we have these hormones. Does that kind of make sense?
So much. Yeah. I was thinking back as you were talking, like when I was, okay, I think 14 or something is when I got my period. And
Yeah.
you don't understand this. So you're just like, I don't know, like I'm just like bleeding. And then when you really don't understand the body, you're like, what is happening? Like, and it's just crazy as I've gotten older because I've really been able to figure out, I know exactly what phase I'm in and the exact, like it is
Yes.
crazy. And then both of our husbands, well, I guess, and you are like avid hunters. And so my husband always has to like relate it to hunting. But even just like an animal, like a deer, right? Like they always say that like when you're headed into that ovulation phase, even deer might feel this way or whatever, but like women will start to feel prettier,
Yeah.
better complexion, better energy, like and like the men are like more attracted to them. Like isn't that weird? But like even same with
Yes.
animals. And I was like, whoa, like, and I don't know, like you all listeners know that we're like big believers here, but I'm like, whoa, God's so fascinating because I'm like, it all makes sense. Because before I don't know, I just thought I was bleeding to bleed. Like I didn't understand. And I think it's so good that you said it is related to pregnancy and the body is getting ready to be pregnant or it's not, right? And then we started all over again. And so it's just the woman's body is so complex. And that's why I love coaching women because every single woman is so different. And the things that we're coming up against, just our environment, think about how much that even changes our internal health, our hormones. It's so crazy. So hopefully that really makes sense for people because it changed my life like once I understood the different phases. And I'm so much like you where I'm like, wait, so the one should be 7 days and then follicular should be the next 7 days and then that just
Yes.
how it
Yes.
works. And we'll talk about that later on, but no, that makes total sense. So okay, so let's kind of start to get into like the actual like hormones and health journey. I'll have you kind of like go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, we can get a little, maybe not confused is the right word, but we can kind of question why is this important to understand? Like, okay, Cindra, I have a cycle every month, like I know this, but how is that related to our health journey? And I just kind of want to back up and just really emphasize what you kind of said about that ovulation phase where you're like, man, I feel pretty, I feel beautiful, my skin is shining, I feel strong, like how many times in our life have we went to go pick up a weight and we're like, what is happening? Like I could lift twice this much just a couple days ago. Or you go to pick up a weight and you're like, this is the lightest thing I've ever touched. Like I think it is so important for women to understand your cycles. They're going to create different feelings and emotions that you're going to have every month. The more that you understand your body, the more you can optimize in one, losing weight, two, building muscle, three, your overall health journey, four, in my case, your marriage. Like, I mean, let's be honest. And when I did not understand how fluctuations worked, I would just get really mean, lack of better words. And I didn't know why it was happening. I'm just like, I'm mad at the world and my husband's in front of me and he's the one that's going to get it. Well, when I started educating myself and learning about my cycle, y'all, like when Jordan kind of talks about like knowing where she's at in her cycle, let me tell you, like my husband knows because we talk about it that much in our house that I know for a fact that 7 days after I ovulate, I'm not the nicest human. Like that's when some hormones start to change a little bit. But because of that, I know it, I'm prepared for it. I can walk into it feeling good and know how to navigate it. Let's take this into a health journey perspective. That 7 days past ovulation, I'm going to feel like royal, no good for nothing. Like, I'm not going to want to get off the couch. I don't want to lift. I want to eat nothing but carbs. Like, it's a common thing for me. So if I am prepared for that, I can set my body up for success and say, guess what? 7 DPO, maybe not lift as heavy, maybe just like maintain your routine, maybe have some healthy foods prepared and ready to go because you know you're going to want the chips. Like, let's be honest. So with that being said, just kind of diving into how does this affect our health journey? What if we're not trying to get pregnant? Like, is it even important to understand this? And I will say 1000% because it does directly affect the female body. So kind of going back to the hormones we talked about, we kind of talked about estrogen being that main hormone in the beginning. Well, estrogen is also used in the body to distribute fat throughout the body. And we can kind of see in research that the more estrogen we have, it can create more deposits in the thighs, in the lower body area. Sometimes, depending on age or where we're at, I did find one research that kind of explained like closer towards menopause, you start to notice abdominal fat cells starting to increase. And how many times have we had women say, like, I've never had a belly like this. Like, where is it coming from?
Yep.
It can all be connected to our female hormones. So when we're looking at estrogen, if we have excess estrogen, or another term is estrogen dominance, we could be fighting against that, where our body is naturally trying to put on more fat cells, especially in the lower body. And that can be, which I may talk about this in a little bit, but that can be linked to endometriosis. Like that was kind of what led me down the path of understanding my endo diagnosis. And you know, I can admit the lower in my body definitely has the more fat cells. So I can say that is true for my case as well. So that's why understanding estrogen is so important. Now, the next step is progesterone. Progesterone can be quite, you know, fluctuated cycle to cycle. I think I think there needs to be more research done for us to know more facts about progesterone. But from what we know now, progesterone needs to be at a high enough level to be able to maintain pregnancy and everything else. But with that, progesterone also is the one that's going to increase water retention, bloating. It's going to make us feel a little bit more fatigued. Like that's where that, you know, little frustration, like that 7-DPO, like 7 days after ovulation, when I start to feel a little bit more angry, I can thank progesterone for that. And so if we understand, hey, you know, I heard somewhere that like when my progesterone rises in the end of my cycle, I'm going to gain weight. I'm going to get bloated. I'm going to have water retention. I think it's important to understand like where you are in your cycle to identify if the weight goes up a little bit and comes back down. If you feel like you're on this teeter totter and you're like, well, I didn't do anything different, identifying where you are in your cycle can be a huge impact on that. And so I think that is important to remember as well. Now, the third hormone I do want to kind of discuss and go into detail about is more the insulin side of things. So you had kind of mentioned insulin resistance and how that works in the body. And I will, you know, preface by saying I don't consider insulin like a sex hormone, like a reproductive hormone, but it is so tightly connected that I think it is important to discuss. So when we're talking insulin resistance, and all of this, like you hear that word, and sometimes it can kind of come like a hype word, if that's the word you want to use. But do we truly know what that means? Like, what is insulin resistance? So just if I can break it down at the most simplest form, let's say we are eating sugar or carbohydrates. We eat something with some carbohydrates in it. Our body's going to digest it. It's going to absorb that sugar and put it into our bloodstream. That is where we get the term blood glucose levels or blood glucose. It's just sugar in our blood. Well, at a certain point, the body says, hey, enough is enough. Like, I don't need too much blood glucose. So the pancreas will start secreting the hormone insulin. When that insulin is secreted, it kind of grabs a hold of the blood sugar out of the blood, and then it distributes it to the cells. When it distributes it to the cells, that kind of gives us immediate energy. The way I kind of like to describe this is like, have you ever like eaten an apple or eaten some grapes and it's like, wow, I feel so much better. You kind of have that energy burst, but then think about like, I don't know, you eat a donut. Let's take a donut, for example. It's like, yeah, you have this like skyrocket of energy and then you crash, like that absolute crash from it. So that's what we're kind of talking about. That's those energy levels when we're talking blood sugar and putting the sugar into the cells. Well, at some point, you know, we're not going to be able to use all the blood sugar we have. Like we can't just give it to all our cells because we do need it for later use when we're working out, like when we haven't eaten in a while. Like we need to make sure our body's designed to say, hey, like I want to keep you safe. And so what it does is it starts to store the insulin will start to store the blood sugar into the muscles and liver, primarily mostly the liver. Well, when those storage sites get full, where does the blood sugar go? It goes to our fat cells.
Yep.
So when we're in that cycle, let's kind of paint a picture here of, okay, Cindra, what does this even mean? Let's paint a picture. We eat sugar, the insulin takes it, puts it in the cells, but muscles, liver, and then it starts distributing it to the fat. Well, we just eat some more sugar. Where's that going to go? Into the fat cells. We just ate more carbs. Where's that going to go? Into the fat cells. Like we're just kind of continuing that cycle of putting it into the fat cells. And what makes it even worse is when we continue this cycle, your body actually becomes a little resistant. Like that's why it's termed insulin resistance, because it will become resistant to the insulin, almost like it doesn't even recognize it
Yeah.
as what it's supposed to be doing. So the pancreas, it creates the insulin, it secretes it, and the body's like, okay, like what are you? Like what are you doing here? What's your purpose? So because of that, the body kind of says, hey, let's speed this up. Let's increase this insulin because obviously the body's not responding to it. So we need more.
Mhm.
And when it starts secreting more, that's where the term insulin resistant comes from, because your body is literally not even recognizing the insulin anymore because you're putting so much sugar in the body that it's kind of just creating this wheel, if kind of cycle effect. And that is the phase between, like, if you want to say healthy and type 2 diabetes. There's that in between where our body becomes resistant to the insulin that is being created by the pancreas. And that is where it becomes a problem
Wow.
for the blood sugar. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's crazy to think that this, the more and more and this is actually, this just came to my head when you were talking, like why we're so huge on, okay, let's say, because, okay, we really promote having a moderate lifestyle, right? Like moderation. So if you're gonna eat a carbohydrate as in whether it is an apple or like a donut, like that's why it's so important to move, resistance train, whatever, because then we can
Yes.
put a lot of that sugar, into the muscle cells, and we don't get the liver can only take up so much, the muscle cells can only take up so much. So then we don't want all of this just like remaining in our bloodstream to the point where it's wreaking havoc on the system. And now think about all of the chronic disease that happens when we have so much sugar in our bloodstream, right? And that's when you start to see
Yeah.
just issue after issue, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So, oh, this is so good. I just hope that like makes sense, just that breakdown of that for some people. Cause I think I mean, we've been in the medical field, but I used to get a little bit confused of like, okay, so when sugar enters the body, like what really happens? So I hope that really paints a really good picture for people.
So now kind of going further, I want to kind of tie it together because I know we kind of just jumped around and we went from, menstrual hormones to blood sugar insulin. And you're probably like, okay, how do these connect, Cindra? The important thing is, and I do want to kind of break it down, is again, taking it all back to menstrual health. How is this going to affect our overall health? Well, I want to give an example of what could be something that can come aware, or what is something we can look out for in our cycles that might kind of tie these together. And one of those is PCOS, the polycystic ovarian syndrome. In simple form, it's just kind of saying like there's more cysts around the ovaries. We can kind of see this more with irregular cycles. So if you're somebody that you're like, yeah, I have a cycle and it's like 27 days long, but my next one can be like 50 days or 70 days, or I mean, I know women that haven't had a cycle for 2 years and it's like, I'm not on birth control, I'm just not having a cycle. Primarily, that's a main characteristic of this PCOS. Well, there's a lot of evidence that shows PCOS and insulin resistance kind of connected together. Now, I did kind of go on a deep dive because I really wanted to understand, and I think you even asked me this, Jordan, of how are they connected? And I will say there's a lot of different evidence out there. I don't think I have the perfect answer for that, but we kind of know with PCOS that those irregular cycles and things like that, it's actually an increase of the male hormone testosterone. And when that male hormone comes up, one assumption is it kind of disrupts the body's ability to perceive the insulin. So again, we're kind of talking insulin resistance there. It's not efficiently using the insulin. So the testosterone rises, we're becoming a little insulin resistance. That's kind of the hallmark for PCOS. And what happens is when somebody does have those higher insulin levels, they tend to crave carbohydrates. Well, we just kind of painted that picture of you eat the carb, if we eat too many, the insulin, the body doesn't really recognize it, so it starts producing more. Well, if you're craving the carbs, we're going to eat more of it, and it just creates this vicious cycle. And I hear it so often. You'll kind of hear the characteristics or the hallmarks of, I have irregular cycles and I can't lose weight no matter what I do. And it's like, hey, this could be a cycle wheel that we're on. This can kind of lead us into the direction of understanding it can kind of be tied together with that PCOS. And again, like with that craving, again, we're going to increase those carbohydrates, just creating, again, that cycle even more. So that is just like one example of how all this plays together, of our menstrual health and our overall health in our body, and how much they're interconnected. Another experience that I am very aware of, hence my surgery, is extreme pain in your cycle. I remember, and Jordan, I don't know how you were growing up with your cycles, but I remember that girls would complain like, oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain, or I couldn't come to school yesterday because I was in so much pain. And we hear this so often that it's like, oh, that's normal, right? Like if you have a really painful cycle, it's normal. So many women have it.
Yep.
And what I thought was a painful cycle, when I started to talk to people, they were like, no, that's not what I feel, Cindra. So to kind of paint a picture, I remember my first, probably 2 years of my cycles, I would black out from pain. Like that first initial day of starting my cycle, I would just kind of like, I don't ever remember fully passing out. But again, like I was so young that I remember being in the bathroom and then I would be like, oh, I'm looking at the ceiling. So maybe I did pass out. But like as bad as it sounds, that was the start of my cycle. I heard people talk about pain.
Yep.
So I wrapped it up as, oh, that must be normal. And
Yeah.
I think that's what is so important to understand, is it's like what is normal, what is. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit later. But if you're having those extremely painful cycles, it can be related to endometriosis. It can be related to these other factors of your menstrual health. Well, let's talk about endo a little bit. What is endo? Endo is, like, at the most simple form, kind of an inflammatory issue. And how much have we heard about inflammation in our health and how much it impacts our health, right? And to kind of take it a step further, kind of what I was talking about before, is endometriosis is pretty linked with estrogen dominance. And if you remember, I kind of discussed with the estrogen hormone, it distributes fat. So if we have high estrogen, we're going to have a likelihood of increasing our fats deposits in our body. And then kind of the last example that I want to give of menstrual health, if you're like, man, I'm really resonating with this. Another example of how they're connected is if you're someone with like extreme PMS, like you kind of hear of the women that it's almost like the depression, the anxiety, not being very kind to their spouse. That's the one that I could probably relate to. The cravings, like I didn't have cravings until I started like our infertility journey and got a little help with it. But let me tell you, those cravings can be intense, and that can be linked with the PMS, and those can be signs of nutritional deficiencies. And if I had time, I would love to be able to kind of go down the line of like what all of them mean. But, something I say very commonly is every single individual is different. So just because I had painful cycles and I had endo doesn't mean you do. It could be a deficiency.
Yeah.
Just because you have something like, let's say yours presents in cravings, your deficiency might be different than someone else's. And so I hope this is making sense of how important it is to understand that your reproductive hormones are so tightly connected with your overall health and your overall journey. And if you're just like, man, like these things are starting to come together, these things are starting to align. And one analogy I like to give so commonly, because I don't think the menstrual cycles and reproductive system is talked about enough, but it's a main organ, right? Like, do you remember in science class, you're learning about the organ systems, and it's like, we learn about the cardiovascular and we learn about the renal and all these different ones. And yeah, reproductive's talked about, but not as much. So it's almost like a left out, maybe is the word to use, like left out organ system. But this is the example I like to give to people is, I'm using a laptop right now and it works great. I love my laptop. It works. Everything works. The keyboard, the mouse, the screen. well, let's say the mouse quits working or it doesn't work to the ability that it does now. I can still use my computer. I can still use my laptop. I can probably do everything, but it's going to take longer. It's going to be more frustrating. It's not going to work efficiently. And so I share that analogy to say, if your reproductive system is showing some different symptoms and signs, don't kind of ignore those. Don't let doctors push them to the side. Be aware that it's part of the computer system. Like your reproductive system is connected and it can tell you so much about your body. And one thing that I say is like, as women, is as much as we despise our cycles, like what
Yeah.
a beautiful example of being able to truly know your health and being able to say like men don't have the ability to be like, oh, I know where my health is. And so just kind of looking at your cycles in that way to be able to connect it all together and kind of just be able to say like, hey, like I'm starting to show some symptoms, like kind of not pushing those to the side. And another phrase that I say so often, and I think it's probably the most passionate phrase that I have of mine,
Yep.
is just because a symptom is common does not make it normal. Like if I could just say that to every woman on the face of the planet, just because cravings are common, it doesn't mean they're normal. Just because pain is common doesn't mean it's normal. Like it's not something you have to live with. Just because there is a link of PCOS and insulin resistance doesn't mean that has to be your story. Like there's so much we can do for that. So that's kind of the breakdown there. Do you have any questions so far?
That's so good. And I just, it makes me just like think back to again when I first got my period when I was younger. And then thinking about even now that I have a daughter, like it's so cool to understand it now because then I can like teach her because like, I mean, nothing against my mom, but she didn't know either. Right. And so it's
Yeah.
like, you just got your period, whatever. And like, I just remember so vividly, I was like, okay, I just noticed blood and I was like, don't tell anybody. And so then I was like,
Oh,
in the bath, and then my mom was on the phone with my aunt telling her, and I was like, "Mom, I just told you not to tell anybody," because I was like so embarrassed. But no, so growing up, we just didn't eat the healthiest, not because we like whatever, we didn't know better, right? You don't know what you don't know. And it was cheap to eat, just Little Debbie's and hot pies and pizzas.
macaroni and cheese, the
Yeah.
craft.
Yeah, craft, so like that's just like what we did. And I remember in high school, really vividly, like my periods were bad. Like they every time, like I would be like I remember specifically 1 month, I told my mom, I go, and I'm just like, I didn't like to just miss school to miss school. I actually like school. So I was like, I cannot go. Like I just remember couple times like so curled up in a ball, just kind of almost shaking, like just in so much pain in my pelvic area. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I just thought it was normal. I thought it was normal because everybody would say, like, oh yeah, that's just period pains, it's just cramping. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. And so I would just like take some ibuprofen and just try to like push through it. So now like learning though, I'm like, whoa, that wasn't normal at all. And I don't know if you have any could speak to this, Cindra, but okay, so that was high school, and then I went through like nursing school and probably wasn't the healthiest in nursing school either. But when I just got out of nursing school, it was like 2015, and I started to understand the body a bit more. I worked with my own first coach. I started to get into different lifting and everything that I discovered post nursing. And my periods went from like so painful, 7 days, like so heavy. If there's any guys lifting, sorry, this is gonna tamp, but like I would bleed through a super plus tampon like so
Oh,
quickly. Like I would have to have like a pad. Like it was just so bad every month. And I started eating cleaner and I cut out all of the crap and I started lifting heavy and I started just all of these things that we preach and teach now. My periods went from like literally like night and day. And I was like, whoa, like this is crazy. And so there has to be something to be said about that. Like what was going on internally when I was eating like crap. I mean, I was exercising. I was an athlete. I played basketball and soccer, but like, why was it so bad when and it was probably inflammatory, right? It was probably excess.
yeah.
And it probably links right to exactly what you're talking about is I probably had I don't think I had PCOS or really endometriosis. I think I just had like a ton of crap in my
Deficiency.
body. Yeah, deficiency. Yeah, you're exactly right. I didn't have the right, yeah, minerals, vitamins, things that my body
Yeah.
needed. to support my reproductive system. And it's just, I just look back and I'm like, whoa, like how crazy. So now it's just even Coach Erica, she's got daughters that are, menstruating now, and one just kind of went through like some things, and she's like, hey, like let's go get your labs drawn. And like we could see like massive deficiencies and just even like vitamin D and stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
holy cow, I bet that would have been me had I gotten that back in, the 2000, whatever, what it 2008 to 2012. So anyways, all that to be said, it's so cool to like know this stuff and then look back. And I say this on every podcast. What a cool time to be alive, because we now know things that we just never, I feel like we just never knew. Women's reproductive and all of that has always been overlooked. I have always said this too. Postpartum has always been overlooked too. And it drives me insane because like, I don't know. I just think that God designed us so incredibly. It's just so fascinating. I'm like, there's so much going on in the body in these two phases of life, and really all the phases of the life of a woman. Like, why is
Yeah.
this not focused on more?
Right.
So hopefully this helps somebody. One of the things that Cindra had said that was so good is just because it's common does not mean it's normal. And if you're feeling these things, now some cravings is normal. You're
Right,
gonna,
right. We're talking like
yeah.
extreme. Like again, you even mentioned it. You're like, you're not able to function your life. Like you had to miss school. I'm quite literally blacking out. Like we're talking these extreme.
Yep.
And like I said, like I've went through so many different things to kind of help my reproductive system. But I know my body so well now that, like I said, like 7 days after ovulation, I'm gonna be a little more crankier. Okay, we can expect that, right? Like, and I will even go as far to say, if our diet was 100% organic, like it's supposed to be, there was no pollutions in the world, there was no mold, like if we had a perfect little bubble we lived in, would we be able to get rid of every single symptom? I truly believe so.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, we don't live in that perfect world. So to have a little bit of symptoms here and there, to have some cravings, yeah, I can say, hey, that's pretty to be expected.
Yep.
Um, which is why it's important to know your body. What is your cycle telling you?
Yep.
And I feel like this is such a great point. Like, me kind of talking about my pain. Well, I did the exercise, I cleaned up my diet, I did all the right things, and mine didn't go away. Like
That's good.
mine stayed. So
Yeah.
then I knew I needed to look further.
Yeah.
And I think that is such an important point to make right now. Like if I could tell every woman on the face of the planet, well, where do I start? Like if I'm starting to have these symptoms, where do I start? Your health, like you have to start with your nutrition and fitness, which I'll kind of go into a little bit more. But if we're not willing to start there, no matter what we do, it's not going to get better. Because if your nutrition and fitness is the problem, well, that's an easy fix. Like we're good, deficiencies fixed, you feel better.
Yep.
But let's say it doesn't get better, then we can kind of look a little further. But let's just paint a picture. Let's say that I did have endo and I went and got surgery. Well, what's the chances that that endo is going to come right back in just a couple months because I didn't fix the deficiencies in the fitness and the nutrition, right? Like there's a step factor to this for a reason, and I will 100% say like nutrition and fitness is so important with
Yes.
your. I mean, how many women have we coached
Yeah.
that when they start to get on the plan and it's like the full macros, they're eating whole foods, they're like, I've literally never had a cycle better. And I'm like, I love hearing that.
Yes. And just, I was even thinking this too, like, just like the endocrine disruptors, like,
Yes.
not only like fitness and nutrition, which is, I mean, nutrition is everything, but like, even just as far as like the deodorant you're putting on, the, detergent you're using, even things like
Candles.
that. Yes. Like, there's so much toxicity that's happening around us. And something that I don't know what I don't know if I heard it on a podcast, but it was so good. I think about it all the time, but he's like, our body's meant to detox, right? Like our body, that's how God designed us, right? It goes like our liver, our kidneys, we detox. But the more that we can basically take all of the outside things, like the toxic things from our body, right, and give our body a break, the better off it is, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
yes, it's gonna try to detox things, but it's like for all that is holy, like give it a break. Like if we can get that out of our system or just away from our system, and that comes from whole foods, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, we did like an hour and a half Zoom with our clientele just on like things around the house to avoid. But I
Yeah.
think you go down a complete rabbit hole there. But I always say start with your food because that keeps you alive. Start with your movement, get muscle in your body, and then we can start to deep dive into the things around the house that are potentially affecting your reproductive system too. But yeah, I love that you said that from like my experience and yours. Mine got better. Clearly, I was, right? Yours didn't. Okay, now there's an issue. And then we see that. So
Yeah.
you're a woman listening and you're like, oh yeah, like I have all these symptoms and I'm eating like crap. Okay, well now you know the very first thing you should do. Like go get your nutrition right, right? And it's so funny. I think you and I are so passionate about this, Cindra, but eating healthy is not easy. And so I will see this all the time. Like people will go, they'll get rid of their deodorants and they'll like have all these healthy things in
Yes.
their mouth and they'll just be like, well, I don't do this and I don't use this and da, da, da. And I'm like, okay, so how, like, what did you eat last? Like, what did you have for dinner? And they're like, well, like I had some cookie, and I'm like cookies and like licorice and all that. And I'm like, well, what the freak's the point? So I think it's so like if you hear me say anything ever, I will say this till the day I die. If you cannot get your nutrition right, like good luck getting the rest of it right. And the rest.
Yes.
So that is why we are so passionate about getting nutrition right before you really sometimes even look under the hood. Like
Yeah.
start there because guess what? You don't have to spend money there. You just gotta, I mean, maybe to get a coach, right? But you don't have to go get test after test after test after test, which
Yeah.
holistic testing, I mean, Cindra can vouch for this. She's doing it gets expensive, right? And so her and I are so passionate about this. Yes, like that's how she's gonna make a living, but it's like that's why she works simultaneously with me because it's like, let's get this very conservative thing out of like lifestyle, nutrition, fitness. These are the three things that we should focus on. And if things are still not good, let's look under the hood. Let's
Yeah.
do this. Let's do that. So now I want to talk about this because I thought this was so interesting because I can talk about my experience with this just literally like 9 months ago. Um, okay, so apps to track your menstrual cycle and like how to
Yeah.
understand what phase you're in because what a cool time to be alive. We get to actually have an app that tracks it. So kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So kind of tying into what Jordan was saying is with everything we've kind of discussed today, now we're going to kind of head into, okay, how do we figure this out? How do we know our body? What's the best thing to do? Cycle tracking, I think is amazing. Like your first kind of step to understanding your menstruals is cycle tracking. I am not a sponsor of Premom, but being on a 5-year infertility journey, I've had some experience with some cycle apps. And I will say Premom is my favorite. And I will say this across the board. And you even said this, Jordan, like me and you are such nerds when it comes to like testing and knowing your body. Cycle or tracking your cycles is just as important, or how do I say this? Like it's kind of the same concept as tracking your food. So let me give you an example. I track, having UC and everything else, I tracked my food. I was able to identify right away triggers like, holy crap, I ate this yesterday. I'm not feeling good today. Like that, being able to identify triggers that make you don't feel good so quickly is probably the best thing you can do. So when we're talking cycle tracking, you're able to kind of put your finger on stuff. If it wasn't for tracking my cycles, I wouldn't have known that one, I had short luteal phase. So kind of when we were talking before, like that luteal phase supposed to be 14 days. Mine was like 9 to 10. Okay, that's a progesterone issue. Like right off the bat, we have the answer of what that is. Being able to track my cycles, I was able to know 7 days after ovulation, I'm not going to be in the best mood. Well, what does that set me up for? That sets me up for taking it a little bit easier, maybe focusing on walking and getting outside and focusing on my mental health and being able to journal on that day. Like being able to know this about yourself, being able to prepare my husband and say, hey, it's today, like just give me this one day and then I'll be back to normal. Like that's what it was allowed me to do. And I will go as far as to say, and I know this is kind of controversial, but my lifting has taken a step forward because I know my cycles to that degree. Because let me tell you, in my follicular and ovulatory phase, like we're hitting PRs. Like we are, when
100%.
I'm like, hey, I wonder if I can hit this number, we're going to hit that number. Like we're going to push ourselves. Okay, well, in my luteal phase, I know the days that I am weaker. I'm going to maintain weight, and I know in a couple weeks I'm going to be able to push more. So let's kind of paint that picture different because you're like, well, why didn't you just try to PR? If we try to PR and our body's not set up for it, we're expending more energy than we need to, or maybe even too much. And then when we do go to PR, we don't have what we need to be able to do it. Like, again, it's kind of the cycle. And I will preface this by saying not every woman is like that. That's why you have to know your cycle of, some women. I think Erica talked about this, that she's like, no, I don't really have that like downfall in the luteal phase. I can just grind hard. That's important to know, right? Like, or for me, I only have like 2 days out of the month where I'm just like, take it a little easier, Cindra. And I know that I can push it hard following that. So that is a huge part of cycle tracking to understand the overall health. And with the apps, again, I love Premom. There is an app called Kindara. I believe Kindara is more of a healthcare provider. Like if you have some OBGYNs, some may use Kindara. The Flow app, Ovia, I think is how you pronounce it. I forgot how to pronounce that one. That's just a couple that I know of. I know that the Apple phones, I think they have an app for cycle tracking now. I don't know. Have you used any that you enjoyed?
I got the Aura ring and I thought
Oh yeah.
that was super interesting because, well, I was just, I don't know if I've really ever talked about this. With my first two babies, I got pregnant like right away. And then this last one, it took us a good bit. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll like get my Aura ring and see like what my cycles are really telling me based off like, I think it does temperature and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff, sleep and what have you. But I really honestly love the Aura ring. Like if I used to have an Apple Watch and I just like love the Aura ring. So I don't know how, I guess I haven't done research. Is it like super accurate? I don't know. But and of course, like literally I got pregnant and I got it 2 days later in the mail. So I have no idea if it's like good at tracking like your
That
menstrual.
is hilarious.
Seriously, you've got to be kidding me. But my sister-in-law, who's also dealing with some fertility stuff, she really likes it too. And I've heard a couple of my clients, so that would be like another thing. And there's another app, I swear, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but the one thing I was gonna say is I was like dying laughing because Cindra will like always tell her husband, like, dude, I'm about to be a bear these next 2 days, so you just better watch out. And like my husband has picked up on it too, and I'm like, just get ready. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because like, you can't really like help it. You're just like, like even with my kids, everything just like pisses me off those like 2 or 3 days, And it's just so dumb because I'm like, but then backing up to like my ovulation phase, I feel my complexion feels good. I feel pretty, like I feel strong. Like I can yeah, hit PRs. Like I just feel, your sex drive goes way up. Like it's so interesting when you start to realize that the apps have helped me so much understand where I'm at and then understanding the phases. So if you don't have an app, like we are so passionate about tracking your food because it's just data. Data doesn't lie, right? Um, it's not a program, right? It's data. And same thing with tracking your cycle. It's data. And what are we going to do with the data? Which I think is so cool. And I really want you to talk about these LH strips because this is something that was so new to me when I was trying to get pregnant. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I never knew anything about this. So you'll have to tell the listeners about that a little bit, and then I'll kind of tell like my story with it.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna back up a little bit. In the very beginning of this, we kind of talked about estrogen gets your body ready for ovulation. Well, there's another little hormone in there that's called LH. It's called luteinizing hormone. That luteinizing hormone surges, and when that surge happens, that's what tells our body to ovulate. So this is really, really cool. Now I will preface by saying like you could probably say, well, not all cycle tracks are or tracking apps are great, and LH strips has these negative issues. At the end of the day, nothing's perfect, but over the general span, it can tell you so much about your body. And so what I love about LH strips is you can see that rise of getting ready to ovulate. There's a lot that talks about taking your temperature to know.
Mhm.
I don't, I'm just going to say this from my personal experience going through an infertility journey. I don't love temperature tracking because it doesn't tell you when you ovulate. It tells you like, oh, you ovulated 3 days ago. Like it's a past understanding. It's a great way to kind of know your body. It is one step to knowing it. I felt like it was really difficult because I don't sleep well. So temp tracking can get a little thrown off. But what I love about LH strips is they're pretty point blank. So you can, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can either pee on the strip directly or just get like a little cup, dip it in it, you wait a couple minutes, and that line will tell you you have a test line and a control line. Now, pregnancy test, you always have the control line, but you don't always have the test line, right? Like that test line tells us that we're positive. Well, in LH strips, we constantly have two lines. Like there's always going to be a little LH in the body. And so with those, you want to see that test line become as dark or darker than the control line. When that happens, we know we're going to ovulate soon. This can be different between or among everybody. Most research says that when that test line kind of peaks and is really, really dark, we're probably going to ovulate within the next 12 to 36 hours. Now, this is key, and I like to point this out because, again, not everybody's body is the same. And I just realized that I actually ovulate the day of the peak. So you're actually supposed to ovulate the next day, but my body ovulates day of peak. Not that it's a negative, but it's important to kind of know if you're going to, know your cycles really well. So I thought that was really interesting to kind of learn about my body. But the beautiful thing about this is, like we were kind of talking about, if you want to know where you are in your cycle and you're like, okay, Cindra, I'm not on a fertility journey. Why would I do this? Well, just like what we kind of mentioned, if you know when you ovulate, you're going to know when that cranky day comes. You're going to know when that craving day comes. You're going to know when you can optimize in lifting and when it is, a good idea to kind of just maintain in lifting or whatever that looks like. So I love LH strips. I think they're so easy, and I love Premom because you can get the strips that correlate with it, and you literally take a picture, it reads it for you. It tells you where you're at in your cycle. It lays the whole picture out. And the beautiful thing about LH strips is they're like, oh my gosh, I just bought a box of like 50 for $10, $8. I don't know. They're like stupid cheap. And once you start to learn your body, right? Like, so luteinizing hormone's going to surge before your ovulation. Once you start to know your body well enough, you take like 5 tests a month, maybe. Like you start to realize like around the time you ovulate. So it's not even like you're testing every day. You're testing like 5 days, 7 days out of the month.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think LH strips are really, really cool. And I will even say I am such a nerd when it comes to testing and knowing my body. And I'm like, dude, if I could just have like every female be able to afford it, I would. There's a company that's called PROOV. Again, not a sponsor or anything, but I got one of their testing packages and it tests like all the main hormones we've discussed today. It does estrogen, FSH, LH, and progesterone. I believe those are the 4 that it tests. And it will show you the graphs of like how your hormones are fluctuating throughout your whole cycle. It does do it for the entire 30 days of a cycle or 28 days of your cycle or however long it is. And it can literally show you that like graph factor. I just thought this was so cool because I'm going to go back to kind of what we were talking about before when you're like, oh, yeah, my husband knows when I'm a little crankier. I don't know about you, but when I got cranky and didn't understand why, I literally felt crazy. Like, you know how you kind of said, you're like, it's not like I can control it. I felt crazy. Like, I've heard my mom say this. She's like, I literally feel like I become a different person. I feel crazy in the head.
Yeah.
Well, it's so amazing to be able to see these hormones and then to be like, number one, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not some like
Yeah.
psycho crazy person. Like, this is related to my hormones. How much better can you control it when you're like, and maybe not control is the best word, but when I start feeling that immense anger, I'm quickly able to be like, oh, I know what this is from, right? Like, it's not like we're sitting there like, oh my gosh, I must have not slept good, or I must be overly stressed, or like we know the facts. We know that, hey, this is related to this. I'm not crazy. This is why it's happening. I can get through it better. Like I know what's happening. So those are kind of my favorite ways of tracking in, before we get to testing and everything else. Like tracking in apps is great. The LH strips, I've been married to LH strips for 5 years now, so how could I
Yeah.
not love and then PROOV, like I said, that company is really, really cool. And how they designed it because it's at home. You just pee on a little strip and it tells you all the numbers. So those are kind of my favorite ways of kind of knowing and testing at home.
Yeah, that she taught me about that too because she's like, "Well, when do you ovulate?" And I'm like, I'm not really sure. Like I think I like kind of know, but like I don't know." And then she's like, "Well, try these LH strips." And so I had gotten the Premom app and the LH strips, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Come to find out, I think the reason I wasn't getting pregnant was my husband had just gotten off of his thyroid meds. But anyways, it was still really cool, even if you're not trying to get pregnant, like to understand it. So yeah, you can just pee on the stick or you can just like dip it into a cup. But yeah, you just want it to get like darker than or dark as the like control line. But what's so cool I thought was that like you take a picture of it and it tracks it for you and it'll kind of tell you like the number of like where you're at and that you're like peaking. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So then you know, like, okay, I'm like about to ovulate, right? And actually,
Yeah.
you probably know this if someone is listening and trying to get pregnant, what they want you to have like sex before, like I can't remember. My doctor also just told me this. It was like day, whatever. You know it better than I do. I'm like
Yeah.
30.
Look,
I
I'll go through that right now. Like when, and this is so important, and I was gonna say this, like when you know your body, when you know how the LH is gonna happen, my LH stays super, super low, all through kind of leading up in my high fertility, which we can kind of talk about, but it stays really low. Then I have a day where it rises. That's gonna be 2 days, 1 to 2 days before I ovulate. That day it rises, the next day it peaks, and then it drops down. So when you are trying to get pregnant, the best days to have intercourse is about the 2 days before ovulation, 1 day before ovulation, which is that peak LH for most people, and then the day of ovulation. Those are your highest chances of getting pregnant. Yes, we can go along the lines of, well, the sperm stays healthy in the body for 5 days. We have this and that. We can go down all of those lines, but when you look at percentages, that day that it starts to kind of rise, you want to have intercourse. The day it peaks is very important because you want the sperm there before the egg ovulates and comes out, and then day of ovulation if possible. So that is why, if you've ever heard someone say like just kind of do it every other day, because you're going to be hitting at minimum 2 of those high fertile days.
yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, those are just like things I never understood. I'm like, whoa, this is just like so cool to like know your body. Um, so yeah, I was able to do that, and while it didn't like necessarily help, like it helped me like understand a bit more. So I was like, oh, this is really fascinating just as I move forward, like knowing every woman will ovulate a little bit differently. And so that leads me into I think we're going to talk about this. So what hormone should every woman have tested, right? And every single year, if you're listening to this, you should get a blood work done every single year routinely. Every single person should do that, whether you have something wrong or don't. um, and so it had been a while. I had done a Dutch test, which is so fascinating, too, but it had just been a while since I've gotten my blood work done. So I'm like, I have a friend before, I mean, Cindra's gonna be able to do it now, but like I have a friend who has a holistic nurse practitioner office. And so she's like, yeah, let's just like run a bunch of labs here. And so I got them drawn and like also too, I was like, just drank coffee before it, just, I'm just whatever, went and got it done. So I brought it back to Cindra to like interpret, and she's like, yeah, okay, because basically the nurse practitioner, she interpreted it and she's like, yeah, your progesterone is really low, like you're never going to get pregnant. I was like, oh gosh, that's concerning. Like I didn't know that I had low progesterone. Like I've always thought it was fine. And then I brought it back to Sender. She's like, well, what day did you test on? I was like, I have no idea. I just tested on the day that I could get in. And she's like, well, this is interesting because Cinder was able to go through this entire what would you call it, Cinder? Like holistic um fertility journey with Dr. Morris. What is
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I worked with a naturopathic doctor that was able to kind of explain a lot more in depth of what I was kind of looking at.
Yeah, which was so cool. And so she's like, it actually matters what day it was so that you can understand where your progesterone should be at. And I was like, oh, well, that makes total sense because here she's like, well, your progesterone's really low, and it was. But on the day that it should have been drawn, then there would be an expectation for where it should fall between, right? So then, again, in that circumstance, I was able to advocate for myself. I'm really lucky to have Sandra in my life and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna get a second opinion, right? So I was able to just go through my normal OB and just be like, hey, I love Dr. Jamie. I'm like, hey, can you just get this drawn on this specific day? And I think it might have been like a day before you had recommended Cindra or something. But it's still, from the day that I got it drawn, it was perfectly fine because it was in the normal range for that time of when it should have been. But I think that's something that a lot of women don't know. I mean, I wouldn't have known. I would have just heard nurse practitioner told me it's really low. What should I do about it? Instead of being
Yeah.
like, okay, let's critically think here. Is it truly low, or should I maybe get a second opinion, or should I do a bit of research to see, like, because nothing against the nurse practitioner. She's like, Jordan, like, you might need to get on some progesterone. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And there really isn't. But I was just kind of like, man, like, I never have had low progesterone. So then going to Dr. James, she's like, you don't need to get on anything. You're completely fine. So I probably kind of would have been on it just for unnecessary reasons. Not that it would have hurt me at all. Maybe would have maybe gained a few pounds, but I think that it's just so important to know your body and understand when things should fall where they fall. And yeah, that was like life changing for me, because I probably, my old self would have heard that and I would have just directly done what the doctor said. And now that
Yeah.
I'm understanding my labs and understanding my body, I'm like, it doesn't seem right. And you always trust your intuition and your gut. And I always call it the Lord, like, kind of discernment, right? But I'm like, that doesn't seem right for me. And so just getting sometimes a second opinion is really, really good. And so what that's kind of like my story on what I went through there. But I think let's talk about, for someone that's like, okay, so maybe I'm having these symptoms, or I'm trying to get pregnant, or I'm not trying to get pregnant and I'm in my perimenopausal stage, maybe I'm menopausal. What are, like, I get this, I think you and I get this so often. What are the main labs we should go get every single year to make sure that we are optimized from, like, a reproductive standpoint?
Yeah. So this is again one of my favorite questions. And if you're listening, I do highly recommend kind of taking notes of these that I'm fixing to name off. The ones that, and again, I am just my own person, what I've learned from school, what I've learned from Dr. Morris, like what I've learned from others. And I do want to kind of just like take a minute and say that again, like there's nothing against your nurse practitioner or anything like that. It is important for you to understand the research in yourself. There could be things that we say in this podcast that may be like, oh, is that true? Like, always fact check everything. That I live by. And I will even go as far as to say 5, 10 years ago, the evidence was so different than it is now. And so these labs that I'm kind of explaining, they could be different in a couple years. They could be different. Heck, I could go into school tomorrow and they could be like, oh, actually. So with that being said, like it is not against, in my opinion, it's not always fair to just be like, oh, that nurse practitioner or that doctor. And you definitely didn't do that. But sometimes we'll have that mentality of, oh, this doctor has no idea what they're talking about. Evidence changes, research is constantly changing. And I love that I'm in the middle of learning it. That's why I get to know these things. So again, just to kind of recap, like every single woman, whether you are not trying to get pregnant, whether you are trying to get pregnant, whether you're trying to lose weight and you're not understanding why you're not, like every single year, like you said, Jordan, it is so important. I personally would get what's called estradiol, testosterone, the thyroid panel. A lot of times we'll just get TSH, but if we can look at the panel, so TSH, T3, T4, and thyroid antibodies, it's going to tell us so much more. Those are kind of, important. A1C, that's going to tell us about our blood sugar. Fasting insulin, we talked so much about insulin resistance before. Fasting insulin is important, and progesterone. So again, I'll just kind of name those off: estradiol, testosterone, thyroid panel, A1C, fasting insulin, and progesterone. At the most simplest form, could we say there's some more to draw? Of course, like there's tons of labs we could draw, but those are kind of, in my opinion, the most important ones to kind of know. And you can paint such a picture with these, like absolutely paint such a picture. And so the progesterone, this is the one that I would say is the most important to get drawn on a specific day. So kind of what Jordan was just talking about. And I honestly was just learning about this. Actually, your progesterone should be this. And the number came back exactly what I guessed. And I was like, man, it's so cool how the body works. But for progesterone, a lot of times we will hear, get it drawn on 21 day, like on cycle day 21, get your progesterone drawn. Well, what happens is in the very beginning of this podcast, I talked about every beginning phase for every woman is different. Your menstruation phase could be longer, your follicular phase could be longer. Like that beginning cycle phase is different for every single person. And I'll go as far as to say, in a certain individual could have different ones. Me in particular, my beginning pre-ovulation phase could be 12 days, it could be 17 days, like it fluctuates. So a 21 day is not going to be the same for every person. And progesterone, if we remember, progesterone is the hormone that rises after ovulation. So we have to have ovulated to get an accurate number on progesterone. And as to get that peak, to understand how high our progesterone gets, you want it 7 days after ovulation. So just kind of paint a picture really quick. When you ovulate, 3 days later, your body starts to produce the progesterone. It starts that rise. That's when you might start to see a little bit of symptoms start to come around. 7 to 10 days after ovulation is your peak time. And then it drops suddenly. So if you get your progesterone between day 3 and 6, well, it's going to be low. Like you're still on the rise. If you get it from day, like, depending on who you are, how your body works, if you get it on day, like, let's say 10 to 14, you're in the middle of the drop, like you're going to be low. And so that is why it is so important to go on the exact day or as close to the exact day of 7 days past ovulation so that you know the accurate number of your progesterone. And to kind of go back in Jordan's story, I remember it so vividly because she gave me her number and it was so low. And I was like, send me your cycle tracking app. Like, send me a screenshot of what your cycle looked like. And I started laughing and I was like, Jordan, you're only like 3 or 4 days after ovulation. Like, you just started producing progesterone. It is at its absolute lowest. And I said, I can almost assure you, if you went like 3 or 4 days later, you would have been in peak and your number would be this. And so the next cycle, she went the 7 days and it was the exact number that we kind of had thought. And that's why it is so important. Like she said, advocate for yourself, get a second opinion. In any one of these labs, like it's important to understand your body as an individual, what it's telling you. And I will go as far as to say, I will give an example here. Western medicine has a little bit of a different range for all testing, all blood work, all anything that you get done, it has a range. Those ranges are like something's wrong. Okay, so like deficient or excess, something is wrong. So if you're close to those cutoff points, you're probably heading into something's wrong. Like you're getting pretty close to it, is the way I like to say it. That's not everything, but it's a good way to kind of understand. I'm just going to give a quick example of this. In the ICU, our cutoff for giving blood is at 7. Well, if somebody had 7.1, we did not give blood, but at 6.9, we did transfuse. Like, you know, that's how we have to kind of understand when we're looking at numbers and lab work. Where are we on the middle range? We kind of want to be in the middle of everything. So that in its most simplest form is what I would recommend for every single testing, for every single woman, just to know their body. And I could go in detail about each one, but in its most simplest form, that's kind of the most important test. If you are looking into fertility or just want to know more about your body, you want to get all the ones that I said before, and I'll just name those off really quick: estradiol, testosterone, thyroid panel, A1C, fasting insulin, progesterone. Those are the ones that you want just in general. For infertility or just extra knowledge, you're going to want to get LH, FSH, DHEA, and then SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin. Those are going to tell you even more about your menstrual health and what's kind of going on deeper. I don't feel like those are as important unless we have a known reason. And I'll kind of explain, you know, I love telling about my journey when I got testing done. Mind you, my cycles are pretty regular. Like I said, like I could have a follicular phase of 12 or 17 days, but like pretty accurate. I'm pretty on point. Outside of like pain and some spotting before, I was pretty regular. And so when I got blood work done, I was like, yeah, this is going to be no problem. Like my blood work is going to be fine. And I'll go as far as to say I've always been kind of skinny just because of my autoimmune disease. I build muscle fairly easily. So again, I'm pretty healthy. I just expected to have good blood work. To my surprise, I had 2 major menstrual health blood work that came back that were extremely out of range. and one was testosterone, which I was like, never would have dreamed that because your girl like does not have signs of low T. We will say that. So it was really funny. And even like everyone that knows me, they're like, yeah, not what we expect to have low T because I have immense amount of energy. I build muscle well, just all kinds of this stuff. Like I don't really typically struggle with fatigue. My sex drive does not happen in ovulation phase. It is 24/7. So like just kind of knowing your body.
Yeah.
So I was really surprised by that. But what I started to notice is with my low testosterone, there was some other things that were in factor, stress, like other things were kind of pulling from my sex hormones. That's where we paint the picture of the body coming together. Once I got my stress under order, once I started really focusing on that, my testosterone came right back up. So that was an easy fix for me on that one. Never had to take anything for it. Low progesterone, that was one. I had extremely low progesterone, which painted a picture of the endo, the painful periods, all the different things. So again, that just kind of gave insight onto what I was kind of dealing with. And then another one that I was extremely surprised by because I looked at fasting insulin, like if your fasting insulin's high, oh, you eat a ton of sugar. We kind of painted that picture before, but stress can increase your insulin as well. And I could go on a whole topic about this and I'll try to keep it short, but stress, think corticosteroid, that's our cortisol level. When you take a steroid, it makes your blood sugar go up. When you're stressed, your natural steroids go up in your body, your insulin resistance is going to go up. And so my fasting insulin was actually, it wasn't like enormously elevated. It wasn't necessarily like a high concern, but it was definitely higher than what I would want it to be. And so I just focused on stress mitigation, healthy lifestyle, and brought that fasting insulin right down. So I think that's important to remember when we're talking about blood work. Sometimes we can get a little anxious because it feels like, oh my gosh, if they find something wrong, do I have to get on medication? To which I will say, absolutely not. Like that is not what I would recommend. And again, you have to have like your own voice when kind of going down this path. But like I said, everything that I've done in my journey, I've been able to mainly do through healthy lifestyle. I mean, through our fertility journey up to this point, Lord willing, it doesn't get there. We've not had to take medication or anything like that because, again, I'll go back and say, because some people might be like, why haven't you just jumped to IVF or why have you not jumped to this? Because if there's something wrong with my body, I want to help it, right? Like I want to support my body. I definitely don't want to bring a child into the world into an unhealthy environment. And that's not against anybody that chooses that. Like, again, it's just kind of knowing my body. I already have an autoimmune disease. I already have known situations that I want to get balanced before. So all that to say, let's say your labs come back completely wonky. Cool. Like we can handle that nutritionally, fitness wise, and healthy lifestyle. There's so much you can do with your body in that sense.
Can you also explain just really quick? I thought this was so interesting that you learned through your naturopath doc, but um and I think there's like this is going around on Instagram too, the high cortisol, but when you explained to me how that high stress, high cortisol can pull from those sex hormones, when you showed me that graph that she had
Yeah.
explained to you, I was like mind blown because I'm like, whoa, we don't just naturally have like, I mean, maybe, but like a lot of us, we don't just like have low T and low progesterone for no reason, like what were you, 28 years old when you got this done? Like that shouldn't
Yeah.
be a thing. So explain just as simple as you possibly can, but I thought it was so intriguing.
Yeah. So the way I like to kind of explain it, and there's this like huge graph that I kind of showed Jordan that's really science in depth. But the way I like to explain it is think of a pyramid. At the top of your pyramid, you have DHEA. That's kind of like our main sex hormone, if that's what you want to call it. DHEA, think of it spilling over. So DHEA kind of spills over, and that's what kind of balances our progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen. When that spills over, the bottom of the pyramid, the very bottom of it, is cortisol. And so if your cortisol is elevated, if you're extremely stressed, your body is designed to protect you. Your body is designed to give the essentials to where it's needed. So if we're highly stressed, cortisol is going to be higher. If cortisol is higher, it's the bottom of the pyramid. It's actually going to pull, like it's going to, again, we're kind of talking about that like spilling over factor. It's actually going to pull from all of those. And that's where we start to see some imbalances come in. Like I was kind of talking about, I had low testosterone because my cortisol was so high. It was just taking every bit of it. Progesterone was high or low, sorry, progesterone was low. It was taking every bit of it. So that's where it's important to know, like, again, going back, painting the picture, your entire hormone health can paint a picture of our overall health. And again, if we have that pyramid effect, DHEA, we have our sex hormones, and then cortisol that kind of pulls from that.
Wow, that's so good. I thought that was so fascinating because I didn't know anything about that. I mean, I understood that cortisol affected the body and the hormones in some sense, but that graph, just visually seeing that was so cool. And then if you would share this, because always advocate for yourself, always get a second opinion if you just your gut isn't telling you that it might be right. But some docs will just put you right. Like, okay, so Cindra, if you were to just maybe go to just a general family practice doctor, okay, and they were like, oh, yep, we got your labs drawn, low T, low progesterone, get on HRT right away at 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, potentially, maybe some people do get on it.
Possibly.
And which I really want to preface and say there's nothing wrong with what you choose, but I just want to educate on the other side of it that I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe you did get those labs drawn with your doctor. Uh, the things that she put you on was just some DHEA, some rhodiola. Explain just some of those supplements that you were able to take that drastically helped you. Literally, you got your labs redrawn and they're really just completely normal now, right? So, what were those things that you took just to give the listeners just a bit of an idea of what you can do if you don't want to go like the actual HRT route?
Yeah. And I will say that I loved the naturopathic doctor that I worked with because I repeat probably a lot of the things she says because we believe very similarly, just like you and I, that if you don't fix the root cause, it doesn't matter how many supplements you take, it's not going to work. It might help for a little bit, but it's not going to fix the problem. And so, yes, she put me on some supplements, but I also did some lifestyle changes. But the supplements you kind of mentioned was DHEA. Man, I haven't taken that in so long. I want to say it was like, shoot, I know it was like one capsule every other day because we don't want to take too much of it. We want to be able to make sure that we're staying balanced. And anytime you do take supplements, be sure to stay up on your lab work so that you're not creating more of an imbalance. So I was on DHEA, and then like you said, the rhodiola rosea, which everybody in JNFC likes to tease me, and they're like, if anyone says they're stressed, they're like, oh, we know what Cinder's gonna say. Like, get on rhodiola. Because and what we normally hear in society right now is ashwagandha. That's kind of like the bigger adaptogen we kind of talk about. Which I did take ashwagandha. I had a negative response from it. It did not work well with my body. And I have told everybody my dream is to do a research on different personality types and how ashwagandha works versus rhodiola, because I am absolutely convinced that there is a personality type difference. And I will explain, like, my husband's kind of more the laid back, go with the flow, easygoing. So is my mom. They both can take ashwagandha and actually feel a little different. They feel like it helps if that stress is kind of getting there. Me, I did not. It actually made me more anxious. It made the anxiety worse. It made the stress worse. But rhodiola is similar. So if you're thinking like, if you're like, okay, Sandra, what the heck are you even talking about? Think Tylenol and Advil. Like they do kind of similar work, but they work different. And some people, Advil works great. Some people, Tylenol works great. Think of it in that form. You have ashwagandha, rhodiola. Well, rhodiola helps balance cortisol levels. It helps balancing the stress level. And so when I got on it, I went from anxiety attacks, again, something I thought was normal. My mom my mom, I love her to death. And it's just because like she is not into the whole holistic as much. Well, now she is because she listens to me talk about it every day, but she didn't know about this side of the world. And she has tried to get me on anxiety medications for a couple years. And I will say, again, nothing to my mom, but that is how bad my anxiety was. Like anxiety attacks every day. to the point that they were just like, oh, I'm having another one. Like it was just like I would look at my husband and it was like my heart rate, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, my heart rate was like 150 for 3 days. Like it just would not drop. I don't know why I didn't go to the ER if I'm being honest, but I ended up bringing it down by myself. But it was just like, oh, yep, here's another episode I'm kind of having. Well, with rhodiola, in no time, I noticed that I wasn't having those anxiety attacks anymore. I noticed that just like stress level was coming down. Something that seems so trivial, but the actual like deciding factor of how much it impacted my life was I used to be very particular in like I would come home from work, working a night shift. If you're a nurse and you've ever worked a night shift in ICU, you know what it feels like coming in that door. You have nothing left in you and you're not very rational. I walked in, my husband had done all of the laundry, all of the dishes, had food ready for me. Like I'm talking perfect husband, like A plus gold standard husband. But he put a cup in the wrong place and it blew my mind. Like I know it sounds so dumb, and you're like, why would that? But it kind of felt like my world crashed. And it's like, if you can't do it right, why do it all? Like you're not even helping me. Like I have to go behind you and now fix everything. Like but that's what my stress level was. And I've talked to people and they're like, oh my gosh, I've had the same fight with my husband. Like, it's kind of embarrassing, but yeah. Or another way I kind of explain it is like, I'm very, like, I like towels folded a certain way because if they're not, they're just falling all over the place, right? Like, if you don't fold towels right, it's like they don't stay. And so if a towel wasn't folded right, like, I couldn't walk past it. I would have to stop what I was doing and it was becoming a problem, let's be honest. Like, but I just was not willing to get on medication. And so when I took rhodiola, the towel didn't consume me, the cup didn't consume me. And I used to be afraid that I was like, oh, my house is going to go to a disaster. Like, I'm not going to keep it clean anymore. And it's not. It's just like, oh, I need to fix the cup. Like, it's like a no brainer, kind of like what, like, you're sitting there laughing and you're like, how, like, why would that make you mad? I'm like, now I understand why, like, that's crazy. And so I will attest, my husband has said that it has saved our marriage because, but again, like, and my husband starting a business, his stress was extremely high. So I had him start it. And my husband said it so well. He explained it that he's like, rhodiola doesn't stop the stress. It doesn't take the anxiety away. It doesn't take the, fear factor or anything. You still have the stress of life. But when you're like ready to just like go cliff diving, like when you feel like that panic is fixing to happen, it kind of brings you back down to reality. Like it brings that rationality back, I guess you could say. So that is one thing I do love about rhodiola. If you're like, okay, what's the difference? How do I know what would work best for me? One, you can kind of try. And then two, like I have found that type A personalities, the ones that have higher stress, the ones that are, a little more anxious, they tend to feel better with taking rhodiola. And when you get stress under order, when you get cortisol under order, everything else kind of falls into place.
Right.
So that's kind of my story of the different supplements and why I'm such an advocate. One day I will have my name on that on rhodiola.
100%. Yeah, just her explaining that to me, I was like, that is just so interesting. And I don't remember I've taken ashwagandha. If anything, I remember it hurting my stomach more than it just
Yeah.
sit
Yeah.
well with my stomach. So I've never tried rhodiola, but want to definitely try it. I'm just such a type A, like, so like it probably will help me too when I'm done being pregnant. Um, okay, so we've been almost talking for 2 hours, which honestly, I swear to you guys, we could probably talk for like 5 hours. There's so
Yes.
much that we could talk about. So hopefully this is helpful. And I was gonna go into like a whole nother like section of it that I thought about when you were talking, Cindra, but you're gonna like kill me because you're like, no, we're not gonna talk about that. But I was thinking maybe you can touch on it just like slightly, but for all the women that are on like who are trying to track their cycle, but they're on like birth control or an IUD, like I don't want to really go down that rabbit hole, but it's like that's hard, right? Because like I even have a client who's on an IUD and she's like, I mean, I'm having like some spotting, but I don't like really know like where I'm at. And I find it really hard for her to be able to understand her body because she doesn't know when she's not really getting a period. She's just kind of getting some spotting here and there. And she'll be like, oh, I'm like bloated. And it's just kind of like, we just don't really know. So that's probably another discussion that we could go. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
I've never fully read the book Beyond the Pill, but I've heard it's so, so good. And this would just be another just like insert to just like educate yourself and just advocate for yourself, like literally. Like, and I understand if you're to a point in life where you don't want to get pregnant, like totally understand that. Where you're like, Lord help me, I can't have another baby, like financially or whatever your circumstances. But I would just be, I guess I would just, before we go like deep dive into that, just like do your research and
Yeah.
see if there's just like other ways to, because what I learned now that I am where I am today, that the menstrual cycle is so important and to have. It's so important to have monthly. And I guess I think we might have actually talked about this, Cindra, on the last podcast. But even the color of your blood. I mean, it's
Yeah.
gross. TMI to any guy if they are listening, but like the color of your blood when you are menstruating, that is important to optimal metabolic health.
Yeah.
And there's just so much to that. So again, nothing against anybody that's on birth control, but just do your research because I think that that's something that's really interesting. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but I was thinking about that and I'm like, what if someone's listening and they're on one of those? What's the best piece of advice you would give them?
Cool. That's a loaded question,
I
Jordan,
know.
because my heart, I'm just gonna share it because again, this is a passion of mine. I would have to ask the question, like, why are you on it, right? Like knowing the certain circumstances, like every individual is different. And so I will always say have autonomy, like, or advocate for yourself, like know why you're on it. But the second thing that I would say is if God designed our bodies this way, why are we trying to stop it? Like, what are we creating? What issues are we creating in our bodies if we try to stop that or if we're trying to decrease it? We just kind of looked at the pathways of the hormones and how they're affected and how they work together. If you have the reproductive system that you're trying to slow down, it's like slowing down your mouse pad. Like you can still use your laptop, and I'm not saying it's going to destroy your body. I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, I've ruined my body forever. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But more or less, like you said, educate yourself and ask yourself truly, like, is there another route? Is there another way I can take? Is there something else I can do? Because it's so important. And again, yeah, I could probably go an hour
I know.
and talk.
I was like, I shouldn't even bring this up, but I was just thinking about that because it has been a challenge coaching people, like where I'm just like, wait, so like because I want to just understand their body too. No, but that's really interesting. And the other really quick thing I wanted to talk about, because I meant to say this earlier, was just when I mentioned like I could have been put on like progesterone or just like if you're on HRT, that is not bad. Like if you were put on HRT and like you're on testosterone or progesterone or whatever it might be, that is not a bad thing. So I just want to make sure that that was clear. Like don't think that like I said, I'm saying that getting on like my mom's on
Yeah,
testosterone. My mom's 50, she's gone through the perimenopause, like she legit has low testosterone and her body is chronologically aging and we're
yeah,
not producing like we are in our 20s and 30s, right? And so she feels significantly better just by adding, a little bit of testosterone every day. And so there's nothing wrong with it. But I always just say, especially what I was referring to is like you're 28 years old, right, or whatever. So again, just know your body, know the season of life you're in, and then advocate for yourself. That's just kind of what I wanted to explain too, because I just wanted to make sure no one thought that I was like HRT is bad, because it's absolutely like
no, no,
Dr.
no.
Yeah, Dr. Jamie puts people on all the time. I'm like, yeah, that's so good. That's great. All right, you're optimized there. Like, let's like optimize on your nutrition now.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's
uh
just another approach. Like that's kind of how
yeah.
I talk about like nutrition and fitness. You have another option. You have another approach.
Yep.
And I say again, like advocate for yourself. We say that so much. And I'm gonna be honest, there's not a single doctor out there that is gonna agree with every single decision I make. There is not a nutrition coach out there or a holistic provider that's going to agree with every single decision I make. And quite frankly, they don't live in my body. Like, and I don't mean that to sound rude, but that's really how you have to become. Like, they don't live in your body. They don't know what you're going through. So you have to make the best decision for you. That's the way that I kind of explain it.
So true. And yeah, just I think once you know your body, you know exactly like what you should do for you. And that's all that you
Yeah.
need to. Um, okay, so the last thing that we're going to talk about is just someone who if you're experiencing imbalances or like, again, shameless plug, like I've already said this 5 million times, but like you need to get your nutrition right. Like seriously, like I'm not kidding. It changed my life. It's changed Cindra's. Like
Yeah.
Cindra has UC, one of the most severe cases in her 20s. I'll never forget this. If you guys haven't listened to my last podcast, go listen to her story. Like Coach Danette was like, whoa, I never heard her story. Like she was almost crying from hearing her story. But when you said you were like sucking on rags just to stay alive, that's like heartbreaking, right? For like someone 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
So what's crazy though, and you were just talking about this before we push play on this podcast, is you're like, Jordan, you're like, no one, like, I could have been put on medication or whatever, but you're like, I learned how to eat healthy, right? And I learned how my body, and you literally went into remit, like you didn't have a flare up until the stupid scope for a very long time after you came and worked with us and like learned how to eat. How crazy is that? So with your
I wanna I wanna emphasize that what I was telling Jordan right before the podcast is I'm just learning so much in school, and it's hard to not become angry sometimes, but you have to be able to use that anger towards passion. I feel like that's what I do. But to take this a step further, and again, I sometimes it can be like, oh, she's so dramatic or she's making it up, but no, like I have evidential proof that I was sepsis from how bad my UC was. There, I went through probably 10 doctors that had no idea what was happening to me. I was so sick, they could not get me to a level to be able to understand what would work. For my from 17 or from really 20 years old till about 25, I was in and out of the hospital every 3 to 6 months. Like I'm talking, I was absolutely sick. I ended up working with one of the top GI specialists in America. I was very fortunate. I drove 6 hours to see this provider. And that is the person that was able to truly diagnose me. They were able to understand what was going on. They got me on medication to be able to help get my body to the point of surviving. Like, again, not to try to sound dramatic, but that is where I was at. Um, Once I was able to get on some of the medications, I was on infusions. They put me at the highest dose possible, and I just kept having symptoms. And I am talking, one of the top GI specialists in America looked me in the face and said, Cindra, we've done everything we can. We don't know that we'll ever be able to get you to remission. Like you probably are going to be in somewhat of a flare the rest of your life. Like that was what I was told in my 20s, and that's not a way to live. And if anybody knows me, if you tell me I can't do something, I will prove you wrong. And so I started to take matters in my own hands because I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not going to live my life in fear. I'm not going to live my life in pain. I'm not going to live every single day feeling like I have food poisoning. Like, that's just not acceptable. And so I educated myself, changed my diet, worked with you, like the whole 9 yards, to which I was able to come off all medication and go in full remission. What I, top, and again, nothing against her. She saved my life. But it just kind of puts into perspective like how important it is. Your gut is everything. It is truly the starting point of all that we're talking about, hence the nutrition. And it's just incredible to me to be able to say there's another side to the story. Like your story is not final when a doctor puts that on you. Your story's not over. Like, and again, I'll even say it doesn't matter how long, like in this infertility journey, like I have so much faith because I get to write my own story and I get to take power of my body. And so that is something I'm, again, very passionate about. Is it's like when a doctor says like, oh, we've done everything we can, like that's not true. There's more to do.
Yes. Because something we always say too is like, you are not broken. Like, you're
Yeah.
not. You're alive. You're not broken. Like, you're
Yeah.
either dead or you're alive. Like, there's no, like, there is, I always tell my clients this, there is a reason for what is going on. Do not just accept a diagnosis or a whatever is put on you. Like, how many women come to us? They're like, I just can't lose weight. I don't know. Like, it just doesn't work. And I'm just like, what do you mean it doesn't work? Like, that's nonsense. And they'll either come to us and just like instantly drop weight and we just fix it just conservatively with diet, lifestyle, fitness, all that, right? Or we do all of that and we're like, yeah, something is wrong. And now that we've got this fixed, let's go under the hood. And every time we get blood work, we're like, yep, there it is. That's
Yep.
exactly what's going on. And now we got to go do XYZ route to get you to an optimized place. There's always a reason, always. But
Yeah.
what I just always drive home and I'm so passionate about. You can't do the XYZ testing if this other side of the story isn't fixed, right? Like
Yeah.
you cannot just eat like crap and not move your body and not optimize over here and try to take a million supplements and medications. It's just not going to work. So
Yeah.
that's what we're so passionate about. So I don't even know, we totally could like derail on this, but going back to just hormones, getting your body just cleaned up, feeling amazing. What are just like the main things if someone's listening to this, they want to get their hormones balanced. We already told them what labs to get drawn. We already told them how important nutrition is. What are just like some top like 5 things that they can do to just start optimizing like today?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Number one, I will say if you're desperate enough, you'll put the work in. That's probably the most important thing that I would say to people is if you're desperate enough to feel change, you will change. And I mean, I guess it's hard because when I had to change my life, it was tough. Like, let's be honest, like we've had these conversations, it was tough, it was hard, but it was so worth it. And it's almost like learning a new language. Once you learn it, you're good forever. Like to me, it's just like it's everyday life now. So putting the work in, I think, is the first most important thing. But what can you do if labs are abnormal or we're not feeling great? We notice there's something off. Eat healthy omega-3s, healthy fats. That's avocados, nuts, animal fats. Don't be afraid of those, fish, those kind of things. If you see anything labeled low fat, 90% of the time it's not going to be your friend. Like if it's a like the craziest thing to me is when you have like butter. Like that is a fat food item. You can't remove the fat of it out of it and it still be butter. Like they're gonna have to replace that with something. So just kind of looking at nutrition labels and understanding healthy omega-3 fats. Have a balanced exercise routine. Don't be sedentary. Don't walk 2,000 steps a day. Like let's shoot for at minimum 8 to 10,000 steps a day. Like we have to be moving. It may feel like a lot, but we're doing a step challenge in the group right now. And every single person that is pushing themselves, they always come back and say, holy cow, like I used to think 5,000 was so hard to hit. I used to think 8,000 was so hard to hit. Once you get used to it, it becomes normal. So walk, work out, do not lift 7 days a week, but also don't lift none at all, right? Like have that balance. Balance is so important. You need to be lifting and lifting heavy weights. When we say heavy weights, we're talking like squatting what, like 2 times your body, or is it 1.5 your body weight, bench pressing 1 time your body weight. Like those are goals to have. Those are things. And you may be listening to this and be like, dude, I can't even bench press 30 pounds. Me neither. Like I was there. I started in my autoimmune disease, literally bench pressing 35 pounds. Now I'm hitting goals of 135. Like that's what we need to be pushing for. Again, lift 3 to 4 times a week, do cardio 1 to 2 times a week. Like if I could stress anything to the ones that love cardio, and I don't want to hurt feelings at all, but cardio should be looked at as a cardiovascular exercise, not to lose body fat percentage. Like, yes, it can help in that. But cardio is so important to help with the cardiovascular system. So kind of minimize that to 1 to 2 days and be able to get that in. So that's kind of the exercise. Eat a whole food balanced diet. Like you have to have fruits, vegetables, meat, and whole grains, like in healthy fats. Like eat a whole food balanced diet. Pay attention to stress. Advocate for yourself. Like those are the things that I probably would say are the most important.
Yeah. And I don't, oh, did I just cut out? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's just breaking up a little bit, but I can still hear you.
I said like unstable. Did you say castor oil packs? Because that was something that like
Oh yeah.
that.
So castor oil packs, you can just get like cheesecloths from Walmart. You can do it the fancy way and get wool, which is pretty expensive, but you can also get just like cheesecloths and then soak them in organic castor oil. You want it out of a dark glass bottle because castor oil draws out toxins. So if you get it in a plastic bottle, it's going to be drawing all that plastic into it. So a dark glass bottle, soak those cheesecloths in it, put it over your liver. Again, that's kind of our detox organ you kind of mentioned. So put it right over that liver, which is like right below that right rib cage. And then over your uterus area, put a little heating pad over it, just sit there for 20-30 minutes. You can do that a couple times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, and it helps the natural pathways of the body. Especially when it comes to the reproductive system. It can really, really help with that. I love doing castor oil packs, and it makes you calm down. Like if there's anything that I will say, like, yes, it helps with pulling out any toxins and helping the natural pathways of the body, but it forces you to take a deep breath. Like you have to sit there for 20 minutes, leave that heating pad on you. Don't look at your phone, try not to watch TV, just like take deep breaths, read a book, like calm yourself down. You're getting such a great 2-in-1. You're decreasing stress, you're minimizing that screen time, you're pulling out toxins from the body and allowing the natural detox pathways to work correctly. So yeah, I love doing castor oil packs. Like I said, they can have some really fancy ones online. If you look at it, it can get pretty expensive. Go the cheap route, get some cheesecloths, get some glass organic castor oil, and put a heating pad over it.
Yeah, that was something that you had taught me too, which I thought was super, super cool. Like, even to the point, like, if my son's like constipated, like, go to castor oil, just put a little bit on
Yeah.
belly, which is so crazy. Um, but no, this is so, so good. Like, I really hope that this, like, one, blesses someone, but like just helps educate, because like, if I was listening to this podcast like 10 years ago, I would have no clue about any of this. And some
Yeah.
people might be there, and which I totally understand, especially if you're not like in this realm of work. Like, this could be mind blowing for some people. And to end it, like, yes, like deficiencies come from the lack thereof something in the diet usually, right? So like if you're noticing like these symptoms like I was having, I was just so curled up in a ball every single period. I literally just had a deficiency of the main nutrients, vitamins, minerals, protein, macros that my body needed, and just
Yeah.
instantly fix it when I fixed my diet. And so
Yeah.
I would start there, and then I would go and I'd work your way down.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was so good. Yeah, that was like, I'm like obsessed with this podcast already, because I think it's just going to be so helpful for so many women. And we already did a podcast on like perimenopause, menopause. So if you are in that stage of life and you are listening, make sure you go listen to that, because that kind of the protocols and stuff maybe look a tiny bit different in that stage of life. But I think regardless, like, menstrual cycle is normal, like, to have, and to understand your body is the utmost important thing that you could ever do in this lifetime. I am determined until the day that I die that I know my body inside and out. Which is a cool thing, right? I mean, I don't know if I talked about this. No, I haven't, because I probably talked to you about it, but even so much so that like I literally knew I was pregnant. I just like knew it, because what was the very first thing I told you? I went down, we were doing heavy back squats
Oh yeah.
the day before Christmas Eve. And I went down into that back squat and I was like, wow, that felt really good. And I was like, usually it takes me just a bit to warm up here. Like, usually my hips are just tight because I'm the worst mobilizer in the world. Like, two things, if I'm a health coach that I'm terrible at, and I will just admit it right to all you guys, I suck at mobilizing, like, and just like stretching and like being active in that. And also, like, I literally hate like doing the whole like face washing and like the whole like face routine, like where you have to like,
Oh yeah.
I can't stand that. So
That.
my two things I would call myself out on. I'm so bad. But so, and I like watch my dad, and I have his genetics. I'm like, oh my God, he's so like his joints and stuff. I'm like, I need to start now. I'm in my 30s, but I went down
Yeah.
to that back squat and I was like, something's up, because that felt amazing. Like, literally, it was like heavy, and I haven't felt like that. So instantly I'm like, okay, there's something up, because that's not normal, right? And so that doesn't happen when I get my period, but like instantly, when you get pregnant, your hips start to widen. Is it
Yeah.
the relaxin in the body, or what is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts to increase. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, there you have it. But because I'm so in tune with my body, instantly I knew. 10 years ago, I would have had no clue. I would have been so oblivious to it. Like, I was just telling, I think, who was it? Erica? I think I was telling you, Erica. Like, I used to just wake up and go to school and eat a honey bun.
Yeah.
That was honey bun, like, I don't know if it was a little Debbie, and I drank chocolate milk for lunch.
Yeah.
And then I would maybe have, I don't know, whatever the lunch was. I ate school lunch. And then I don't even think I maybe drink one tiny water bottle a day, if that.
Yeah.
How I even was an athlete, it still blows my mind. And so
Yeah.
I just feel so blessed. I'm like, oh my gosh, all this stuff now that I can teach. I don't care if my kid's like a super good athlete or not. I can just teach them how to optimize their life. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is all just so good. So we will hopefully get to post this here in the next couple days. Anything else that you can think of?
Oh, I could think of so many things, but no,
Okay.
again, just kind of recapping the entire thing. Pay attention to your menstrual health, get lab work done every single year. If you don't have somebody that you either, I wouldn't say trust read it, but if you want somebody, like we can definitely do that for you. That can be helpful to pair with your coaching and to know, hey, like your nutrition coach, your fitness coach knows exactly how to optimize in that area. So that can be really helpful. Eat a whole food, well-balanced diet. Yeah, track your cycles and no, I will probably end it with this. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. Like just repeat that to yourself until you feel good about your body.
That's so good. Yeah, and shameless plug, but I did forgot to even say that. I think you and I are just so passionate. We'd probably do this for free. But honestly, though, like I had a client who, or a nurse I used to work with, she's like, I'm just having so many GI issues. Can you run that GI map? I'm like, yeah. But have you ever like looked at your nutrition with a coach? And she's like, no. And I was like, well, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of really dive into both, right?
Yeah.
Because just as much as that GI map will be really important for her, so will changing her nutrition strategies up. So I think, if you're struggling, this is so hard it's so simple, yet it's so hard to do on your own. Hence why Cindra and I and every single one of my coaches that works for me, we all have our own coach, every single one of us. And it's like coaches need coaches, Olympic athletes need coaches, so it's you don't we know a lot. You don't have to get a coach because you don't know it. It's just like you just need someone for accountability and to push you to be the best you. So that's something that I would also look into too. If you've never even understood what a one-on-one coach is, it's literally changed both of our lives. Like it's changed my life so much. Like I stopped my nursing career. Never in a million years did I thought I would do that. Right. So if you haven't looked into it, it's the best investment you could ever, ever, ever make, in my opinion and yours.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, well, we will see you guys next time. It's March? Yeah, April. We'll see you guys. We're going to talk about how to be a beginner in this whole realm of nutrition and fitness, and yeah, how to have the right mindset going into it. And that one will be really, really good too. We're going to bring Coach Lexi on. So thanks so much, Cindra. You're just like a wealth of knowledge.
Of course.
See you guys later.